Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Your Relationship With podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Snow. I have these little fangirl moments that I'm like, I can't believe some of the people that are on my podcast. And listen, I'm going to give you a little hot tip right here. Whether you have your own podcast, you want to be featured on someone else's site, you want to do a guest blog post, whatever it is that you want to do, people, just ask the question. Just reach out and say, hey, I've got this thing. Would you be interested in it? Hey, I've got a great blog post about such and such. Would you be willing to put it on your page as a guest post? Hey, I've got this super cool thing coming up. Do you want to be part of it? This is how I get these people on my podcast, people. I just ask. And then when I meet them, I say, hey, you know anybody else awesome who might want to be on this podcast? And then it goes from there because hashtag business relationships, hashtag genuine connections, hashtag grow your business, hashtag don't be a weirdo. Even though I just beat a total weirdo. Okay, here we go. Today, I am talking to Maggie Patterson, the host of the Duped podcast. I've been listening to this podcast and I love it so much. And I have been following Maggie on Instagram and I love her so much. She's just a woman after my own heart, speaking the truth, telling it like it is, and calling out the bullshit that happens in online businesses. Now, let me just say this. Bullshit happens in every business. Bullshit happens in every profession, everywhere in the world. However, today we are talking about the bullshit that happens in online business. So Maggie is a editorial director at Scoop Studios. She's the creator of BS Free Business. She has 2 decades of experience. She spent her entire career in client services and has been a successful entrepreneur for over 18 years. Today, she works with service business and agency owners to build BS-free businesses that put trust first in everything they do. Thank you. She's a podcaster, she's a writer, she's a vocal advocate for humane business practices rooted in respect, empathy, and trust. See why I love her so much? She also hosts her own podcast, the BS Free Service Business Podcast, and is the co-host of Duped, the Dark Side of Online Business. You guys are going to love this interview, whether you have an online business, you've dealt with online businesses, or you know what an online business is. This is important stuff for us to be talking about. I hope that you will listen to this episode. I hope that you will share it with your friends. I hope that you will come back in the reviews and tell me what you think, because I am super excited about this interview, in case you can't tell. All right, here we go. Hello, Maggie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Melissa, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to chat with you. I can't even really remember how you and I got connected. I think it must have been on Instagram because I've been following you on Instagram for a while. You do a lot over there, yeah?
Yeah, it's either that or a podcast. That's where most people tend to pop into my world.
Yeah. I love me some Instagram. I'm trying to do more on there, but it's just like so much. I like Instagram stories is what I like, because that takes me like 2 seconds and then I get to move on with my life. I don't need a caption. I don't need hashtags. I'm just like, here's a picture. Goodbye.
I get it. The thing with Instagram, there's so many surfaces, right? So you're just like, where am I going to go? And do I actually have time for this?
Yeah, I was reading a thread, not to go on a totally different tangent. I was reading a thread in a Facebook group yesterday about how to get more traction with your Instagram. And everybody was like, you have to post at least 2 to 3 reels a day. And you have to post reels and stories and posts every day. And you have to go live at least blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like way too much work. How about I just post and see what happens?
That's great if you're a creator and that's your full-time job, but you're not. So totally unrealistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, that is not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about your relationship with the BS of online business, which is a topic I am super passionate about and excited to talk about, because I think this episode is really going to help a lot of people who either have had experience with online businesses that were bullshit, or save people from maybe having some of those experiences. So before we dive in, tell everybody a little bit about you and about what you do and about your relationship with the bullshit of online business.
All right, I'll try to keep this brief, but I am a business consultant. I run a company called BS Free Business. So perfect for today's topic.
Yes.
And that really came out of my own experiences, which I'm happy to share in just a second. But before that, my background has been, I worked in agencies, I was a freelancer, marketing communications background. So I have a lot of real world corporate experience. And that when I start to see what goes on in the online business world, I'm like, oh, wait a second. No. So I discovered the online business world 10 years ago, and I was like, oh, this is really new and interesting and novel, like everyone does, right? Ooh, it's a change. And I'd been freelancing for 8 or 9 years, and I kind of got in there. I took some of the good, but then I started working behind the scenes for coaches, people running big group programs. And I very quickly became disillusioned because of what I saw behind the scenes. I saw a client trying to squeeze me for money as a copywriter, but meanwhile paying $100,000 for a mastermind. Like the values fit was not there, the way they were using tactics. And there was just this kind of underlying understanding because of my background in marketing and communications. I was like, oh, you don't need to run a business and do these things, yet those are the things that are so common. They're accepted as normal. And for people running businesses, we just accept them. We do business with these people, we adopt their practices, and it's become very much the status quo. So I quickly extricated myself from that. And very quietly behind the scenes, a lot of conversations were happening. And over time, since about 2016, I just keep getting louder and louder and louder to the point where about 2020, I was like, okay, great. I'm going to be a consumer educator and advocate on this issue because I have lots to say from a marketing and sales perspective, from a business perspective, based on my own experiences and the experiences that are consistently being shared with me about how very broken and how much bullshit there is going on.
So much bullshit.
So much.
Full disclosure for the people who are listening, especially the people who have never listened to an episode of my podcast before, I also have a lot of experience investing in some of these programs and encountering things that I would consider bullshit or at least unethical. And I think for me, a lot of my experience in the beginning of my business was about feeling like I didn't know what I was doing. But then there's these people out there that are like, I know what I'm doing and I can tell you how to do exactly what I'm doing. And then you can make millions of dollars too. And you can do it in 90 days and it's only $25,000. I'm like, super, that's what I want. Right. And so I understand how so many people get sucked into these programs and masterminds and group coaching and certifications and all the things we get sucked into. Like, so if you're listening to this, I feel you. I have been through the shame and the embarrassment and the, how could I have been so dumb? Like I've been there. So why do you think that there is so much BS in the online space right now?
I think what's interesting is what you said right now. I think it's always been there since the very inception, because if you look at the industry, and I talked about this a lot, the online business family tree is rotten. It started with self-help grifters, MLM people, pickup artists, really gross internet marketers who are very early to game. So where we've got today is the roots of this industry, and the great-great-grandparents, they're very shady. Mm-hmm. So those practices just became very normal because let's say you do a certification with Coach X. Well, then how many people has that person certified? Then your clients learn it, especially because so many people don't end up necessarily coaching or teaching about the actual thing they do. They end up teaching about business because that's more lucrative. And then, so they don't know what they're doing. They're just replicating the tactics they learned from their certification, or they mimic. There's a lot of mimicry and copying that goes on, where it's just like, well, that worked for them. They basically say, I'll help you get to 7 figures in 90 days or whatever. I'll use those type of income claims too. And what's happened is everyone's been indoctrinated into thinking this is a normal way to do business when it really and truly is not. I still work with corporate clients. They don't do this stuff. Mm-hmm. We talk so much shit about the way corporations run. I don't see them doing even a little bit of what I see on an average day in online business in terms of grifting their customers, flat out lies, mindset manipulation. Like we are into the zone of cult-like tactics in a very heavy way. And it's just the way everything gets conflated with self-help and wellness and MLM. Like it's all just one big mess at this point. And we need to, as consumers, be able to recognize these tactics and pull back from them and realize we don't have to do business in this way. And our success is not dependent on learning these things and implementing them and selling out to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of the problem, and I was just talking about this on my interview with Sarah Rose. Do you know her?
Yes. Yeah.
I bet you do. We were talking about the coaching industry as a whole and talking about how what a big part of the problem is that so much of the focus has shifted to how much money can you make as opposed to how many people can you help. And that I think is why we see so many people becoming business coaches, right?
Yep.
Because we see other business coaches making money. There's become a lot of these programs have become more expensive, but also more watered down, right? Like now you're getting a quarter of what you used to get in this program 2 years ago, but it's 3 times as much. And that's not, no matter how you try to spin it, no matter how you try to manipulate us and tell us that it's for our own good, and it's really, you only did it to benefit us. We're not dumb. We're well aware of the fact that these changes are being made because you're trying to make more money faster, right? And I see that all over the online space, whether it's in coaching or other places. The focus is on how much money can we make, not how can we produce the best product, how can we provide the best service, how can we give our clients and our customers the best experience. And that, I think, is a huge part of the problem. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, because the second at which we have 2 things happening in the market, right? We have a lot of people I would call fake experts. Their great example is, I haven't been super successful as a life coach or a dating coach or a friendship coach, whatever type of coach. But I've read enough about marketing. Now I'm going to be a marketing coach.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? At the point you've become a marketing coach and you're teaching tactics, you're not actually coaching anymore. And you are literally paying to learn something from someone who doesn't know what they are doing. And, you know, the telltale sign of those people is it's very dogmatic. It's very rigid. It's like, you must follow my system. When you go to a coach who knows what they are doing and it's truly coaching, not teaching, they're able to individualize and personalize that experience to you. But this one size fits all, you must follow my system, that is a sign that we are into some territory that I'm not a fan of. So there's that faux expertise. And then the other part of it is it's flat out greed. Like, why, as an industry, especially when you look at anything in the kind of self-help coaching wellness realm, that was really about helping people, why has it shifted from being about people to being about the profits? Like, these are supposed to be helping professions. And now it's all tied up in like, help people and get rich. And I'm not saying you can't make a really solid living helping people and doing things that actually are beneficial to people. But what we're seeing right now, this is not it.
Yeah.
This is not it. And I feel like there's so many, I especially see this with friends I have who are coaches or people I, have known business-wise over the years. They are getting lumped in with a lot of people that are driven purely from a place that is about cult-like devotion. It's about authority. It is about a cult of personality. It is about the money. They don't care about you at all. And I feel really bad for this industry overall, because there are so many people that, the industry gets a bad rap when the reality is yes, things need to change. Practices need to change, but there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work out there.
Yeah. And that's part of my frustration. I think why I have there's a lot of reasons I have such big feelings. One is my $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 that I'll never get back. But the other reason I have such big feelings is a lot of what is happening is really harmful to people in a lot of different ways, right? You have people who are not equipped to be coaching, who don't understand what coaching is, if we're just using that example. in terms of online business. There's lots of other online businesses. Even if you have somebody who, like you said, is a marketing expert or a branding expert or, MLMs or whatever it is, you have these people that are like, I know how to do it and I'll show you how to do it. Right. So we give them their money. We get the formula. We follow the formula to a T. This is how it was for me. And I still don't make the money. But Cindy, next to me in the program, who also followed all the things, she's making a ton of money. So now all of a sudden, something's wrong with me, right? Like if she's making money following all the steps and I'm not making money following all the steps, the problem is obviously not the coach or the steps. The problem is me. And that can be very harmful. The other problem is you have people coaching or teaching people. I see this a lot in the MLM health space who are health coaches or nutrition coaches or wellness coaches who don't actually know anything other than what they've been taught from the people above them in their MLM. And a lot of what they're sharing with people in terms of what is healthy is also very harmful, just to give another example. So what are some of the other ways that this BS that's showing up in the online industry is impacting people, whether it's other coaches or clients who are hiring them, whoever?
Well, this could be an entire 10-part series of books.
I know, that was a big question.
I'm going to try to round it up into a bite-sized piece. Ultimately, I mean, you touched on the mindset piece of this, and this is absolutely one of the most harmful pieces of this. When you look at Dr. Stephen Hassan's BITE model, which is, about authoritarian control, the last two are thought control and emotional control. And this mindset manipulation that we see where it's always the client's fault, where it's never the person, the program leader, the coach, whoever that is, taking any responsibility for their product over promising and not delivering, that does a lot of harm. Because here's the thing. Nobody, myself included, you, Melissa, nobody is signing up for these things thinking, hey, I'm about to get grifted. I'm about to get duped by this. No one is thinking that. What they are thinking is, wow, I'm really excited. I feel a little nervous. I'm going to give this over. So you already have, you've demonstrated a level of trust, and then that is taken advantage of and turned around and used against you. And what I loved is when you said it didn't work for me, but it worked for Cindy beside me. What you don't know about Cindy is how many more resources, how much more skills and experience did she have? Maybe she would have made that money whether she was in the program or not. And the lack of shared responsibility for the results between the client and whoever is leading the group is very problematic, because when you're saying it's your problem, you're now saying you have to have devotion to me because this is your problem. You created it. It's in your head, or you didn't do X, Y, Z. And so I think from a consumer perspective, if you're in that situation, it's really hard to discern that maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe it's the program. Maybe it's how it was sold to me, and really extricate yourself. And the idea of a sunk cost fallacy is, we've already invested 7 weeks in the 12-week program. You're not going to walk away. You've invested $10,000. You're not going to walk away. As consumers, I think we have to get really clear on if an investment is going bad, for our own protection and to ensure we're not harmed further, it is better for you to extricate, lose those relationships and lose your money than for you to continue to be in those spaces. And it's really hard to shift out of that, but I want more people to feel like that is a valid option instead of continuing down that path and then upgrading to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, because there's always a next thing with these people.
1,000,000%. And I think it's hard not only to say okay, well, I've already put 7 weeks and whatever amount of money into this. It's also really hard to get to the place where you're willing to admit, I made this choice. I did this. I invested this money. I showed up for this. I thought this was a good idea. I thought this was the thing that was going to move the needle forward in my business finally. And I was wrong. That was really hard for me.
And I think it's hard for everyone because no one wants to admit they were taken advantage of. And if there's anything I personally feel like I can help do in this industry is normalize that there's no need to be shameful. There's no need to be embarrassed. these individuals who are running their businesses in this way, using these tactics from income claims to, testimonials that are like to manipulating people once they're inside of the program to flat out gaslighting, they are really, really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. And like exactly what you said, like you feel it's embarrassing, it's shameful, you feel dumb. That is the common sentiment of the majority of people in these situations. And these individuals know that and they use it against you. Well, if you leave the group, you're going to lose all your friends. Like that is designed to keep you on the hook. So there is no shame. There is no embarrassment to be had for the fact you have been duped. These people are duping thousands of people every single month. And I know because I hear these stories all the time, almost daily, some weeks. So you are not alone. And I think if we can normalize the fact that we are not alone, even though not everyone feels like they can talk about their experiences, that is absolutely critical to consumers feeling like, okay, it's not just me, because everyone does think it's just you.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And when you find out that there are other smart, successful people in the world who also made that choice, it makes you feel a lot better. So what are some things that people should watch out for in the online business space? Because I do think it's important that we acknowledge there are a lot of online businesses that are amazing, right? You have one, I have one. I think we both have one. And there are a lot of people, I've invested money with people that have been great investments. I have a lot of friends who are coaches, who are incredible coaches and doing great things. So I don't want this to come across as like, you should stay away from all of these online businesses. But what are some of the things that people can be watching for? You mentioned like the one size fits all. This is the script. Follow this to a T. What are some other things that people can be on the lookout for?
Yeah, there's so many of these, but probably some of the most prevalent ones, and I think the ones that are most relevant right now is anything in the vein of I did it and you can too. When it's like, this worked for me, as a consumer, as someone potentially handing over money, you should be looking past the, it's usually a rags to riches story. I was living on my sister's couch and now I make millions. You should be looking past that coach's thing to what is their skill? What are their skills and experience? How long have they been doing it? What's the backstory? Who did they learn from? Like the list of questions should go much deeper than I did it and you can too, because the reality is just because I did it or you did it doesn't mean someone else can just pay us and magically do it. It is such a gross oversimplification of things. And a really big part of that I don't feel gets touched on enough is a lot of the people that are in the space of I did it and you can too, did it 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It is a very different economic climate right now. They had first mover advantage, and we need to acknowledge that because operating 10 years ago is very different than now.
Amen.
Period. The other thing is the overblown promises. I'm going to get you to 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, pick whatever number. For me, if someone uses income claims as the main, thrust of their marketing, I will not do business with them because that tells me they're aligned with a certain sensibility. I'm more interested in how can you serve me as an individual versus you making some radical money promise. And I get it. The promise of making more money is absolutely alluring. It's enchanting, but it's not the type of marketing. Like, I want to know way more about you than how much money you claim you can help me make because you did it too. It's not how it works. Another thing to really watch for, and we see this a lot in the course realm, the coaching realm, people teaching, large scale group programs, the luxury marketing. Look at my fancy life. Look at my red bottom shoes, my flying private. Again, especially in North American culture, we have an obsession with wealth. We have an obsession with, capitalism runs rampant and runs the show. So these things are seen as the pinnacle of success when really they're rented, they are a sham, and they are selling you an image. And the final thing I always like to look for is it the idea of the parasocial relationship? Like, are you selling me the image of you as my new guru to lead? When am I actually going to get access to you? Am I ever going to interact with you? Or am I on a large group call and you might answer my question? Never.
Right.
And I think so many of these programs, like for so long, it's been like one person's face when that person is somewhere in Cabo or whatever and is never going to be seen in the program. So be very clear about what you are getting and who you are getting it with. Like if you are working with their brand new baby coaches in their program, that's a different experience than working with the head honcho type thing. So I think really thinking of critically about all of these kind of elements. And whenever you're making a buying decision, slow down, especially if anyone encourages you to go into debt, to take on, sign up for more credit cards. They're coaching you through objections. Nobody should be overriding your agency and encouraging you to make an investment that way. Someone that is really worth doing business with will give you time to think about it, will never encourage you to take risky financial actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm living for this conversation. I wish I would have heard this podcast interview years ago because I've had all of these experiences. As you're talking, I'm remembering a call that I was on with somebody, what's the word I'm looking for? Screening call, a consult.
Oh, like a sales coach type, like enrollment call. Yeah.
Yes. And my objection was the money. Of course, it was a very expensive program, but it was going to get me $10 billion in 5 seconds or something. And he literally stayed on hold with me while I, on the other line, got a credit increase so that I could give him my credit card number so that I could purchase the program, so that I could make all my money back and then some, which is exactly what happened.
And what I tell people all the time is the second someone is encouraging you to do that, you can end the call.
Mm-hmm.
And you should end the call. And if someone wants your credit card number on a call, that should be an immediate no, because that is telling you right there what their values are. Their values are about getting your money.
Yeah.
It is not about serving you, not about helping you. It is about them making the sale.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something too that is really important, especially in the coaching space, whether it's business coaching or personal coaching, is you retaining your own authority and you retaining your own agency. And part of the problem with these programs that is, here's the script, you follow it, you will make money, is we get so sucked into the idea that we don't know the answers, that we don't know how to do it, right? I've never done it before. I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to market myself. I don't know how to sell. All I know how to do is coach. That's all I wanted to do. But now I have to do all this other stuff. So we look for other people that must know better than us. And for me, there was a lot of unwrapping after many years of this. It was almost like a moment that I realized, like, why do I think that her and her know more about what's best for my business than I do? And it's totally the same in your personal coaching too, right? If you have a coach for some personal reasons, a life coach, a love coach, confidence coach, whatever it is, they don't know more about what's best for you than you do. And if they do, to me, that's a red flag. And you 100%. Don't want to be creating a situation where you are dependent on that person, right? I don't ever want my clients to get into a space where they can't make a business decision without talking to me first, that they don't know how they are going to market their business. What are they going to do their talk about? Is this webinar good, without coming to me first? Because I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of stuff, but this is your business. And I think some of the best coaches in particular are the ones who are empowering their clients to answer their own questions, to give themselves feedback, right? To grow their own. Now, I'm not saying you want to be with the coach whose answer to everything is, well, if you did know the answer, what would it be? Because that makes me want to poke myself in the eye. But I do think there is a balance between consulting and people who can give you advice and strategy because of their background and their knowledge, but also still empowering you to know that you know what's best for your life and business. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest problems in this industry is that it has eroded people's self-trust and agency to such a degree that they feel like they always have to have all these people supporting them, and they're putting out a lot of money. And I don't care if you're a service provider, you're a creative, you're a consultant, you're a coach, teacher, I don't care what you are. But if you are consistently putting out that much money and not able to create a business for yourself that is sustainable, that is a problem in and of itself. Because for you to be able to run a business, pay yourself a salary, and really thrive and last for years to come, you need to be able to make decisions without consulting, 14 people about what you should do. You have to be able to trust yourself. And you know what? Sometimes you're going to make the wrong call. I make the wrong call all the time, but at least I made the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I know making the wrong call is just part of owning a business.
Exactly. I'm always like, okay, we'll give this one a shot. And have I made some spectacularly bad calls? Absolutely. But for the most part, things turn out.
Yeah. I was talking to a woman this morning that has an agency. She helps virtual assistants find clients and also like build their virtual assistant business. And they have a thing that they do on their calls or just in life in general, whenever they screw up, they yell bingo.
Yep.
And I am totally here for that. I've gotten like 12 bingos already today. So, okay, those are some of the things that we can kind of be looking for when we're scoping out the marketing and that kind of thing. What are some ways that you recommend we vet people before working with them? Like, does it matter? Do we want to see their certification? Does it matter if we see their certification? What should we be asking or looking for?
So that, this answer is going to depend a lot on, is it a coach you're hiring? Is it a consultant? Is it a creative service provider? But I think the very first part of that is knowing exactly who you need to hire. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes will talk to people and they're like, I need a coach. And then I start asking questions. I'm like, you don't actually need a coach. You need just someone to just do the thing.
Yeah.
You need a website.
Right.
A coach isn't going to help you with the website. So getting really clear on like, what is the need and what do I need from this person? Do I need to develop skills? Do I need work done for me? Do I need someone, keeping me accountable? Figuring out what it is the real need is before you proceed into anything beyond that. And then one of the things I cannot recommend enough is really watching people over a period of time. Not just having people show up in an Instagram ad or have a friend share them and be like, oh yeah, they're going to solve all my problems, because that is a very gut reaction. It's an emotional response. It's not something where you're carefully considering things. You might be having a bad day. You might be totally pumped up that day. And when we're having more of an emotional response, we're more vulnerable. So really thinking, okay, I know 3 months from now, I want to deal with XYZ. I'm going to follow 5 or 6 people, watch for the pattern over time, because it is really hard sometimes with some of these people to immediately see it. But once you start paying attention, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that is, are they willing to have a conversation with you? And I mean, if you are hiring the person, can you talk to the person, or do you have to talk to like
someone from their team?
Exactly. Because if you want a relationship with the person and you've never spoken to the person, that's a sign you're probably never going to talk to the person. Yeah. So being really clear on what your needs are. And in some situations, a group program is perfect where you don't have access to the leader. Other situations, you're going to want something different. One of the other things too, that I recommend for every single one of my clients is they set out a training and education budget for the year, so that financial decisions are not made in the moment. Everything goes back to the budget. So you say, okay, I'm going to put aside $10,000 this year based on its percentage of revenue or whatever. My plan for the year is I want a leadership coach for Q2. I need this done. Having a plan so that you're refining it in time, but you're not making an emotional $25,000 purchase because your friends are all doing it. Mm-hmm. And really spending within those limits of like what the budget is. Always going to be exceptions, but the budget is there to protect you. I got an email from my bookkeeper who said, Maggie, you've spent this budget. I go, okay, I guess I'm not buying anything else for the rest of the year. And that was okay because I had checked off the things I wanted. The other thing is really understanding who people learned from. Like, and I don't mean they is an absolute, like they learned from that person, they're bad, but understanding that family tree again and how that goes together. And you hit on the certification question. I am very mixed on this. Certifications are a bit of a minefield, right? Because some like in the last 5 years, I have witnessed so many bullshit certifications pop up. They're money grabs. They're just expensive. It's like collecting like Beanie Babies. Like, I'm like I've got all these credentials. So I think if you're going to look at a certification, you also don't need to go, okay, they have the XYZ certification. You need to understand what that certification is and kind of that as well. There are some amazing coaches with a lot of certifications they would like to throw in the garbage. There's a lot of service providers with training that has been extremely relevant. So I think you need to look at the totality of someone's experience and not just take a certification as a, be all end all. And if you're really not sure, like someone is throwing red flags, obviously take it with a salt shaker, not even great salt, all the salt, but like look on Reddit. If people are writing things about people on Reddit, it's probably more than just the haters.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question is how much stake should we actually put in reviews?
For me, it comes down to a pattern. And a lot of times I know the reaction has been, and I mean, this is not about one specific person. I've watched this pattern for years and years and years. People will be like, oh, they're jealous. Women should support women. When you have a critical mass of people who are upset with one specific individual, there is a reason for that. And if you do not take that under advisement, let the buyer beware.
Yeah.
Like, do you go to the used car lot that keeps showing up on the Consumer Reports as the sketchy one? No. So consider your business investments the same way. Like, if you know this car manufacturer makes cars that keep getting recalls, why would you go to that car manufacturer? It's the same. And you have to take that same level of responsibility and be a really good steward of your resources, because nothing is more heartbreaking that for me, and I'm sure for you, is like when you hear stories of people who they went into debt, they borrowed money, they opened up another credit card. Like the financial harm and the emotional harm of these investments is so great. And I cannot overstate it. It is literally ruining marriages, sending people into great mental health crises. And when businesses are doing that to people, we really have to take it upon ourselves as a consumer to take good care of ourselves and to be able to look at our friend and say, like, should you really invest in that? Maybe it's not the popular choice, but we are a long way away from regulation. So in the meantime, we have to regulate ourselves.
Yeah. I've always threatened in my Powerful Women Rising community that I'm going to make a link for them to schedule a should I do this call. So it's only 10 minutes, but like before you sign up for anything, before you buy anybody's program, before you purchase even the $9.97 for all my email templates that convert, you have to schedule a 10-minute should I do this call.
I love it because I've been doing that for people in my masterminds for years. There is a hashtag in our Slack communities, Maggie says no. They literally they will ask the question and say, I'm pretty sure it's that Maggie says no.
Yeah.
And I just honestly, sometimes it is a Maggie says yes, but there's a lot of questions and it just forces them to slow down. And if you need that, like have a business friend, talk to your partner or, someone in your life you trust, because once you're out of the online ecosystem, it is amazing what you want to do, what for what. Like my sister works full-time in my business, but she comes from the banking and the corporate world. And it is really funny when we talk about some of these things. She's like, to me, they're kind of normal at this point, but she's always like, hold up, what? That's messed up. So I think getting an outside perspective so you can slow down, because once you hear it reflected back, like if you sat down and explained some of the things you've seen or experienced to someone outside this world, they would be like, why aren't you suing them? Why isn't this person got like a show on NBC taking them down? And it's because these things are all done like behind the scenes. People are very quiet. People fear getting sued. And listen, I am team name no names, because I feel very strongly we need to be able to discern the tactics. Focusing on one individual or two individuals, it's not. It's an entire tree of people that are really bad. They're all little rotten apples.
Yeah. And I think to your point of talking to people who are outside of the online space, I think that's really important. And that could be a whole other 10 episodes, right? Because that can be really hard too when you're so indoctrinated with the other language. And I almost want to say brainwashing of like, they just don't understand. They just don't have the belief that you do. They just don't know how to manage their mind like you do, right? Like now that I'm out of it and I'm like, how the hell did I think spending $21,000 on that was like, yeah, that's a good idea. We should definitely do that. Why did this mastermind that was $10,000 that I did 3 times in a row, even though it never worked, seem like legit? And I would talk to my husband about it and he would be like, whoa, okay, that's a lot of money. Like he's not the person who's ever going to be like, no, you can't do that. Right. But he came from a totally different reference point. I came from a place where I'd already been on those sales calls. I'd already given my objections, had my objections overcome, been convinced that if I didn't do it, it was because I didn't want it bad enough. I didn't believe in myself enough, right? I was choosing to tell myself a story that wasn't serving me. And so it didn't really matter what he said at that point because I had already had all of this stuff in my brain. And like I said, that's a whole other Oprah, but I think it's important to note.
It is an important thing because there is a narrative that is really common about like how people in your life don't support you. Like anyone who's being like, well, why doesn't your partner support you? I will tell you, as having worked with clients in some capacity for the last 10 years in this space, it's not their partners who don't support them. Their partners are looking out for them. It's the person selling them the thing who's not supporting them, who just wants access to their credit card.
Amen, sister. It's so true. Now I'm all fired up. I need to go on a run. I don't even run.
Use the hate fire for something good.
Okay. I feel like this conversation could go on a lot longer. There's so much to this. So maybe we'll have to have you back on for a part 2. But in the meantime, if people want to connect with you, if they want to learn more about what you do and follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I have 2 podcasts. One is called Duped, The Dark Side of Online Business. And
I love it.
Like, if you like this conversation, you are going to love the Duped podcast. I also have another one for service business owners, the BS Free Service Business Show. And you can find me over at bsfreebusiness.com, or that's also my handle on Instagram. I wish I knew my company name just a little bit better.
Well, I have all those links. I'm pretty sure I know your company name, so don't worry. I will put all of those links in the show notes so people can connect with you. Definitely check out the podcasts. They're amazing. I love following you on Instagram. Your content is so good. So hopefully some of the people who are listening will resonate with this. And like I said, I think this is a really helpful topic to be talking about. I think for a long time, people weren't talking about it for multiple reasons. And I think it's really helpful to the people who have had these experiences and hopefully helpful to help some people avoid these experiences. So I thank you so much for coming on and talking about this.
Absolutely. And if anyone listens to this and decides not to buy something, let me know on Instagram, because nothing makes my day more than I heard your voice in my head and I didn't buy it.
Remember, Maggie says no.
Exactly.
I love it. Thank you so much, Maggie.
Thanks, Melissa.
I told you were going to love that episode. Did I not tell you? So good. And I've got so many more amazing episodes coming up. So don't forget to subscribe to the Your Relationship With podcast so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. And if you loved this episode, which I know you did, and I know the whole time you were listening to it, you were thinking, Susie has got to hear this. OMG, this is what we were just talking about. Forward this over to Susie, please. And also, don't forget to leave a review because I love to hear what you have to say. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.